Hello, welcome to NBL Overtime. The FIBA break is done, and what a nice, relaxing, controversy-free week it was. Twitter, well, it was fantastic. There was no shots being thrown. It was all good. All is well in the NBL sphere, or so we're told. Peter Hooley, Damon Lowry, Liam Santamaria, welcome in. Now, some people may be asking, Derek Rucker, where is he? He was here the last couple of weeks. I thought he did a fantastic job. But unfortunately, it's been a week of sanctions, and I had to hand one down. There was no way I was letting Derek Rucker back on this panel after he put Kendric Davis at number 12 in the top 15. So he is serving a week on the sidelines. And we welcome you in, Liam, to hopefully bring some common sense, because I'm not sure what was going on there, but some disrespect on Kendric Davis's name.
Well, thanks for having me in. Great to be back with you, fellas. Great to be back on NBL Overtime. Shout out to Ruck. Putting his cojones on the line and putting all those names to numbers was very fun. But there's been a lot going on. Ooh. There's a lot to break down.
A lot going on. The sanctions, well, they've been handed down. Let's have a look. Of course, the Kendric Davis, Montrezl fan, United, Adelaide, whoever you want to blame, whoever you want to say was in trouble. Finally, the sanctions, a little bit later than we would have wanted, have been handed down, and it is Kendric Davis, just the 2 games, Montrezl, the 3 games, and you can read all of that through the on-court stuff, Peter Hooley. It seems not much punishment, but it's the grabbing the spectator and the handling of the spectator that they came under fire for.
Yeah, we sat here last week trying to break it all down as it happened and the video angles we saw after the game and everything that transpired, and we all spoke about the fact that the on-court scuffle, the back and forth, that happens sometimes, right? Those kind of heated moments, the emotions boil over when you've got some ultra-competitive players in the heat of the moment. And that normally happens and can be dealt with without having to go to a tribunal. But we also sat here and said everything that transpired after that is what's going to get looked at even more in depth. And it clearly did that, and eventually the tribunal got underway and we got those sanctions out of it.
Well, let's have a look at the footage. We'll have a look at the footage because obviously most people have seen it by now, but if you haven't, here's what took place. This is where it started on court, Damon, and now this was where the fines were given out. No one actually lost any games for what happened here, which to me was a little bit bemusing, but it was the off-court stuff where it really boiled over.
Yeah, I mean, the block charge foul, you know, you can go either way with that. Did Rob Lowe pull him down? Did Trez charge first? But then Shea Ely, you know, third man in rule, you know, that obviously took effect. But then this all happened, and there was no need for this. This was the part that obviously everybody got real heated for. You can see all the scuffling and all the stuff going on over there. And I feel like one of the biggest contributors, the big shout out to young Ben Gritsky. Because young Ben, 6'11", young local kid, he grabbed Kendric Davis. Kendric Davis was like, hey, he was like just feisty, trying to get in there. And Ben was like, just calm down, man. See, he's a 22-year-old acting like the 32-year-old. I liked your poise, big fella. So he actually saved Kendric from some games, in my opinion. But like Trez said, you know, Trez is, you know, towing the line, like, yeah, I did something, but I didn't really do anything. And what we got to be careful here, people of South Australia, people of Montrezl Harrell fans, which I'm one of, resist the urge to be a victim. Resist the urge. I know it's powerful, but I want some accountability right here. Put your hand up to what you've done and take account for your role in it.
Yeah, Ben Grishty was absolutely elite in that moment. Great shout out. So were Mark Boyd and Tom Vandervoos, Brad Newley as well, those MU kind of staff members getting quickly into those spots before security got there, by the way. Grishty, I had a tremendous view of it. I was baseline, just watching as a fan that night, and Grishty was unbelievable because Kendric Davis was extraordinarily heated and he wanted blood.
I certainly didn't have on my bingo card when discussing this that Ben Gritsky would be the lead topic on this one.
No, fair call. But he was good. I've got mixed feelings today with these suspensions being handed down because I can't decide whether they've got off light or because, you know, this is players and fans and, you know, you never want to have any of that occur from a fan perspective for sure, but also from a player's either. But also, there's a part of me that feels like, geez, 2-3 games for these guys. I would love to know more. I'd love to know more about what was said, what took place, what was their provocation. There's been suggestion of some really terrible things that were thrown around. Now, was that stuff said? Was Kendric Davis and Montrezl Harrell provoked to that extent? Were they? Does it absolve them from any responsibility of the physicality? No, not necessarily. But it adds to the context, and I'd love to know all of that.
And this is where the NBL needs to improve. Because if you look at the AFL, when someone goes to the tribunal, people can contest the outcome, say, you know what, I thought he should have got less, I thought he should have got more, but people don't question the process. Now, I think that the NBL got it right in this one, maybe even got the suspensions a little bit low based on what happened. But I do still want more transparency in the process, and that was the gripe with a lot of fans online. Whether it be media. Now, we don't want NBL media in there. No offence, Pete, you're an NBL guy. You need your outside journalists. Open that up to the media, not to the fans. Open it up to the media so we understand what exactly the charges were, what the argument was from Adelaide, whether they got done for a striking charge. Just how did they argue? You know, how did they come to a conclusion that these are the fines? All we're given is the results and told, deal with it, that's all we're giving you. The next step for the league in this is transparency through this process, because every single suspension, tribunal issue throughout the season, there has been question with the process. Now, admittedly, some of that has been Basketball Australia, some of that has been the NBL, but there has been a question and queries on the process, and the next step for the league is getting away from that.
No, I'm with you. I think we all agree with that because, again, and first, I woun't want to be in for any of that. I like looking at what happens on the court basketball-wise and breaking all that down, but I still like to be able to see now with the sanctions exactly why they came to these number of games, exactly why it all took place. We don't want to see any players miss games. We don't want to see players, 2 MVP candidates miss games for a situation that should have been avoidable and that could have been avoided in the future and will be avoided in the future because of it. And again, no one's going to sit here and condone any of the actions because it's just not on. And we spoke about it. It's ugly. I'm glad that we can hopefully move on from this from now. But again, to be able to find out exactly how we got to 3 games, how we got to the fine them, how we got to all of this, how there was no fine for other things, all of that, I think we all need to hear that.
And for the people saying, oh, it's the NBL, it's, you know, they wanted to get Adelaide to help Melbourne. It is not in the league's best interest, and maybe I'm speaking out of line saying this, to suspend the 2 most entertaining players in the league. That is not in the best interest of any league, whether you own the league, whether you own a team, whatever it is. The 2 biggest draw cards, Montrezl being the biggest draw card, they're not sitting there going, oh, look, let's get Melbourne a couple more wins. A team that will fill their stands whether they're winning or losing. Let's get Melbourne a couple more wins. That ain't it. They want Montrezl out there, but there is consequences to your actions, and 2 parties can be at fault, don't they?
And that's where I come in at, the consequences to your actions. Now, Melbourne United don't need any help. They've already beaten Adelaide twice. They're fine. They're rolling. But this is a classic example of when keeping it real, Liam, goes wrong. Now, we're talking about some provocation. There might have been some racial things said. I have some experience in some altercations in my younger days when I overreacted to some stuff. Now, I've got more to lose, don't I? I need to be, in that moment, resilient enough, mature enough to go, hey, I need to step away from this. And that is the hardest, let me just say this, I feel for Kendric Davis and Montrezl, if what's being reported is true, that is the hardest thing to walk away from. When somebody calls you out of your name with a racial undertone, all you want to do is just fight. But in saying that, you're too valuable to your team. You got too much to lose. You need to somehow in that moment, Liam, just gather yourself. And that's where I feel like, you know what, the league's got to set a bit of a precedent, a bit of a rule. Those guys did play a role. Yes, there was provocation, I'm sure. But the fans, those guys that did that, there's some repercussions with them dudes too, and they've come down and made a call.
I'll lean on your knowledge and experience in that space. What I will say from my perspective is if that was in play, I would just have an extreme amount of sympathy and understanding for a reaction like what took place. The other bit for me is the on-court fight that resulted for Montrezl in a fine, not a suspension of any sort. So I was trawling through. I'm sure everyone was. Okay, so he got suspended for this, and for the what looked like a punch on Shayili, he gets a fine and no sort of. That bit was interesting for me. But overall, the result is not too surprising. I was hoping this wasn't going to result in any kind of 8, 9, 10 game suspensions, and we weren't going to see those guys almost for the rest of the season. Adelaide have got some heavy lifting to do over these next couple of games to stay afloat while they're out of action. But hopefully they can, because I want to see this team involved in postseason.
Certainly, everyone does. And I was bemused by some of the tweets that came out of Montrezl's Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, because the first one here, LMAO, please cut it with the closed fist mess, because if I punched them, you would have known. Sometimes that one's a little hard to read, but of course, all of this sort of stuff. Now, If we look at the still footage, now the tweet is saying I didn't close fist punch. There it is. It's right there. I'm just not sure what world we're living in. And a lot of fans were saying this didn't happen. What world are we living in when you can clearly tweet that out and there's footage of you punching a guy? I just don't understand if some of the Adelaide fans or whatever it be understand that, hey,
yeah,
that's not on.
Again, this for me is where I'd love to know exactly what took place. So that seems to me like what resulted seems to me like, all right, did he go in and plead not guilty? That,
Yeah.
you know, we've seen it before, right? You get this, but for an early guilty plea, you get that. Maybe that's what's taken place here.
Yeah, certainly was. Now, Adelaide, of course, released a statement on the back end saying that they will not appeal and they're happy to roll with this one, which I think Pete Hooley would be the smart play at this point.
Yeah, it is. And again, sitting here and listening to everybody, I completely agree with all three of you. And again, I think I was sitting here as well, Liam, worried that I was thinking that we're going to see 5+ here at minimum. Like I was just thinking based on up to 10 games for any fan interaction. That's where I was worried. I didn't want to see that either. As you said, they're two of the most entertaining players in the league, two of the most MVP candidates right now. And again, I can't sit here and talk about how to react with all the stuff that was allegedly said. That's not a position that I will ever be in, and I would not understand how that feels. But in terms of professional athletes and what they have to do, and you talk about, they're held to a higher standard than everybody else. Whether you agree with that or not, in society they are. And what comes with that is being able to understand that reactions and retaliation and all that, regardless of all that, will have to be held accountable. So in the end, I think that it's somewhat appropriate, and I'm glad that we can move on and we can see these guys back in action sooner rather than later. Middle of December, I love that there's not going to be any appeal. We're just going to be able to move on from this. Because that being said, you know they're coming back with a chip on their shoulder. Oh. And either one of them, can they win the MVP of the league? Absolutely 100%. They can. And with a little bit of extra added motivation, one of them might.
So just to gain full clarity, is there anyone at the table that feels at all like there's a world where these guys could have got nothing?
No.
Where big bans could have gone to the fans, provocation could have been taken into consideration and some fines, but you're good to play this next game.
Yeah, no.
No, I think that the thing that ruled that out was the fact that Montrezl stepped over the barrier, stepped off the floorboards to originally respond to the comment, and Kendric Davis, which the tribunal found, made first contact. That is the serious part. If they made no first contact, if a fan put their hands on the players first, no sanctions whatsoever. In that case, I would say they would have nothing to answer for, because what they did, if they charged the stands and attacked someone, yes, they would have something to answer for. But a bit of pushing and shoving, if you are pushed first, that's a whole different story. But in this case, it wasn't the case.
And I said last week about, when NBA games, when guys are being heckled in the crowd, we've seen LeBron James do it. We've seen Russell Westbrook. They just point the guys out and security comes and get them. Now, we've never had a situation like this in NBA, or at least I can remember, where people that close to the bench got involved like that. This is new. We got security at the venues. There's people showing you where to sit. There's people, monitoring certain things, but never to that scale. So that's all we got to do now, in my opinion. Timeouts, half times, teams going, from here to the locker room. Just let's make sure we get some people back here. And one more thing, Pete, like they say on the plane, if you want to sit with this exit row, with all this leg room, are you prepared to help out in an emergency?
Well, it's true, though. Again, we're about to talk about the fans and everything that went down, because, again, you can't be acting the way you did. Nobody's saying. Everybody knows that they were in the wrong completely, and finally the sanctions were handed down and they were appropriate ones. But as players, if you allow certain instances to let go because of whatever reason, you open the door for what could happen in the future. Because unfortunately in pro sport, there is a lot of different people with differing opinions in the world. There's going to be fans in other sports who are going to cross the line, whether it's verbally or physically at some point. And it can't be acceptable to react. As you said, Damon, there are steps in place. And hopefully this is a learning tool for everybody else to understand when that next person says something that you don't agree with or you don't like, that we can just get that dealt with in the moment. Because we don't want to see this. We don't want to see our superstars miss games.
Well, the NBL announced today, along with Melbourne United, the sanctions for the fans, and it came as no surprise to most. Some people noticed that the process and the investigation took a little bit longer than they may have wanted, but at the end of the day, it came to the right conclusion. We have one fan, I believe, who's been affectionately known as Grey Hoodie Man, will be banned for life, and the other fan in the black will be banned for 10 years. Now, I personally have no issue with that. I feel like it's the right suspension for all things. With how it's all been handled, I have no issue with that suspension.
I agree with you on that completely. I like that we got such big ones, and setting a tone, and what Dave Stevenson said is that this is just unacceptable. But you talk about the length of why it took so long to happen, and it took me a while to understand too, was if you hand down any sort of sanctions to them, in the first couple of days before a tribunal plays out, and you mentioned the tribunal got moved to Monday, if in Kendric Davis or Montrezl Harrell, when they make their submissions, if there's new evidence there, well, that changes what could potentially go down the line for the fans. So you have to wait for all that to kind of play out first before getting the fan charges done. But we all knew it was going to come and it was going to be a big one. But this is a line in the sand moment that it's not going to happen again.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about the time. There was the FIBA break, so it wasn't going to impact on another game. And like a ref during the game, I'd prefer you were late with the whistle and you get it right. Yep. Then you were early and rushed and you jumped to conclusions.
That's it, but it's time to change the tune right now. Hopefully that is the last we hear of this fracas, because this ain't no cupcake league. Rest in peace to our good friend Corey Homicide Williams. I'm going to kick this one off because in between tweeting up a storm during the FIBA break, I had a bit of a chance to just go.
There's other things in life, man, other than tweeting all the damn
No, there's not.
Look at his thumbs, man. His thumbs are
I got carpal tunnel after this week, but I did go through the archives and I found some fantastic footage on a couple of fronts.
And in their rookie year, Jason Smith's a good example of that. He spent a few years riding the end of the bench and learning the ropes and working hard at practice before he got his on-court opportunities.
Man, not necessary.
Is that you?
Felix.
Is he talking to you there? Is that you shirtless?
That's me. Yeah.
Hang on.
I felt like you could have put some.
Oh, you like what you see?
That's very impressive.
Okay.
The fact that Gorgon also still looks the same age and is in the same shape that he was, however long ago that one was.
Now, I've been scrolling Instagram, plenty of time on our hands without the NBL.
Speak for yourself.
Talking about my algorithms all over the place. Definitely wouldn't be your algorithm, Felix. I guarantee you that on Instagram. But this popped up, and we've seen you've coached Damon, Liam. Check out this. Why we not? What's going on here? What? Look at this for just the bigs just trying to test this out. I don't know
Where on
where
earth
this was.
is this?
Just big fella.
But Damon, you might have to implement this. What do we think's going on there? That
like
popped
this.
up.
Soccer?
Just a little bit of a.
That's got to be in some random. That's got to be in like Estonia or something. That they're doing that sort of nonsense.
How come the coach can't go left? Is he just all right? Like, balance out your game.
Credit though, that was some solid kicks.
They were firing in there.
Hey, I know you were trying to move on from the fight, but I managed to track down some previously unseen vision of the fight, which I thought everyone would like to
no.
Oh no, not again.
see.
Oh, yeah.
It's on.
There's our man. Snitch.
I thought it was worth bringing that out and showing it to the people.
Well, that makes sense now. All your tweets, and you were in there pointing it out.
Yeah, I saw it all. Damon?
Right. Hey, look, yeah, it's no cupcake league. Now, obviously, with Taco Fall being a New Zealand breaker now, he got a 2-year deal. You guys are a little bit critical of him. But me, not me, I actually saw some footage. I saw some training of the big fella.
Which one is he?
Is that you, Damon?
Which one's
Look at that. Look at that. Get a taste of that league. That's what everybody's got coming if you come in there with that rubbish.
Well, unfortunately for Taco, the only 4-foot dude's on his team, so he's probably not going to be able to block.
So anyone from the Little Big Man Society
Now that's
comes into the lane.
Now that guy's not in the society.
Okay.
He's a YouTuber.
Okay.
Now I don't deal with the YouTube society. I don't. Whoever he is.
But you call
He
him.
better come stronger than that. Whoever he is.
Truth.
Taco Fall, on the topic of Taco Fall, who we have been critical on, I think it's time to change the tune because he signed for 2 years. Another thing that has bemused me during the week, he signed for 2 years, but I'm going to move on personally from what I think is a business over winning decision, and I'm now going to move on to, my God, I hope this works. Because he's 7'6", he can actually move quite well. If they find a way to run a zone, whatever it be, if they find a way to make Taco work, which again, it could be difficult, if they find a way to make it work, it could be fantastic.
I sat here last week and said, I know that everything that went on with Freddie Gillespie, but you're lying to yourself if you're not intrigued.
Yep.
By what this could be. 7'6", you got PJC. It's a combo. It's the most unique combination in the NBL. My worries are, yes, rim protecting is great, but you look at the mobile bigs we have in the NBL, and he plays Sam Froling this week, Cam Oliver from the Sydney Kings. Any big, Keanu Pinder likes to put it on the floor, stretch the floor. Any big that can stretch the floor is going to change things a little bit. But I am fascinated to see how they use that to an advantage. And if they find an advantage, it's going to be more unique than anyone else in the competition.
Yeah, the tricky thing for the Breakers is that Freddie Gillespie was playing so well.
Yeah.
That's the tricky bit. Because when Freddie Gillespie at the start of the season looked like he was having a little bit of trouble adjusting, and when he was headbutting dudes, and it wasn't going great, I think at that point it probably made sense to start looking around at the import market and say, hey, listen, if we have to move off Freddie, what does this look like? Then Taco gets hurt. Freddie starts playing terrifically well, protecting the rim, being a really terrific defensive force for you on the interior. And now they got a tricky situation. At that point, they'd already told Freddie, if you find another spot, we understand, go get it. And Inter Milan's right there and wants the big fella to protect the rim. So this is where we land. The reality is just, it is what it is. If he comes in and plays great, terrific. If he doesn't, we're all going to think, well, you messed with a good thing.
That was a very nice quote that the CEO put out. I want to see the quote from Coach Kopp. I want to see Pettery's quote. He hasn't said anything about this yet. Now, of course, he's going to adjust. I mean, he's got that Euro style of basketball. He'll figure out something. But I haven't heard from him. And that's the only thing. So, yep, we will move on, and hopefully the Breakers can still keep their season intact. But one thing, though, if I'm a future import, if I'm even considering the Breakers, I'm thinking, this how you do business? Is this how you do business? I don't know if this is a place that's going to be in the back of my mind. And I'll get over it if things go really well for me.
I mean, that's how they've done business in this instance. In Parker Jackson Cartwright's, they re-signed him and on bigger money. And, you know, like, it's not how they've done business every single time. And then my question to you about Kopp. What do you think he would say? If you heard from him, what do you think he would say?
Yeah, well, we'll find a way to incorporate him. We'll bring him in slowly. He'll think of, I don't know, man. But
I'll tell you what I think he'd say. I think he'd say we need to get to a break, and history will be the judge, and may she be so kind to the New Zealand Breakers. Plenty of teams in the NBL that were certainly in need of a rest and recover and to get their season back on track as we have a look at the Mitsubishi Motors standings and see what the state of play is at this time of the year. Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, well, they're going to be able to make a push. Tasmania, can they do it? The Taipans sitting lonely down there on Cairns Island. Are they going to be able to make a push? Probably unlikely, but there's certainly most teams in play for a finals chance, Pete.
Yeah, look, I'm very intrigued about Southeast Melbourne, to be honest. Again, you look around that pack, you take off Melbourne, New Zealand, and Illawarra, the top three who we expected to be there. I'm really interested to see how they come out of this FIBA break. One, because after they went 0-5, you look at their defensive rating prior to all of that and then what they've done afterwards. Having 2 weeks under Josh King, this is basically like a preseason all over again. The fact that Geordie Hunt and Nathan Sobey didn't go play in the Boomers, they had their squad together to really just add some more things. When Josh King came in here, he spoke about he only just met the team. He's not going to coach that week and he let Sam McKinnon do it. You really can't put too much of your system and your everything in whilst the team's in the heat of battle. Practice might have one before a game and you have shoot around, but having 2 weeks break, I'm sure they would have really gone after and added in some new system things under Josh King. And if they come out firing, absolutely they can make a play in tournament. And who knows where they can go from there. They've got pieces who can be very, very talented.
I'm with you on that one. Josh King's got to get some time to get his things into place. And also he had an injured Derek Walton Jr. So now Derek Walton Jr. hopefully is 100%. There's your lead guard right there. Angus Glover has done a phenomenal job as that combo point guard, two guard kind of guy. His role won't change coming off the bench. He'll get run. But Derek Walton Jr. put that pick and roll maestro back into the mix with Matt Hurd on that one side. They got to get Geordie Hunter more involved. He's only getting a couple of shots a game. That's the only issue I got for them. So hopefully Josh can smooth things out.
It's a good shout that they're one of, if not the most intriguing team of that chasing pack because they've been rolling. I personally think the FIBA break came at the worst time for them. You know, yes, let's get a chance to put in place what you would in an unusual preseason, but they were rolling. They dropped, I think, one in that recent last week, but other than that, they've been playing at a really good level. I thought that they had some good momentum, and when you've got that, you just want the games to come thick and fast. So what do they look like coming out of the break? Do they go to another level having had that time together? Great. Do they keep that same momentum, or do they take the foot off the gas because that honeymoon period is over? They can't afford to because the tennis is coming around the corner. They've got a bunch of home games right in this next little bit that they need to win. And at 5-8, if you lose a few in the next little bit, you're back in the Terror Dome.
Well, let's have a look at the next 8 games they've got. Now, the NBL's taught us one thing. It doesn't matter whether you're playing top or whether you're playing bottom. There is no such thing as a strength of schedule because anyone can win on any given night.
The Warriors, it's a big game. Brisbane away. We spoke a bit about Brisbane. Adelaide, that's going to be without Montrezl, but Kendric Davis will be coming back for that one.
So it's Illawarra, then Cairns, then Brisbane, then Melbourne. So 3 of their next 4 is at home.
As you said, then they all go on the road. So again, I am fascinated to see. They would have seen some things in this break, but I'm keeping Angus Glover rolling the way he is in his position until he maybe tapers off a little bit with Derek Rowland Jr. coming back. But he's playing some of his best basketball so far of his career. Keep going into that, and again, it's huge. But as Liam said, you lose a couple games and all of a sudden you're 10, 11 losses. It makes it really tough.
The Perth Wildcats right now are my favourite team in the competition because I know every time I go to watch them play, someone's going to go off for a record number against them. 50, 46, 29, no matter what it is, the Perth Wildcats are giving us some of the best entertainment. But for their sake, they probably want to turn it around and start getting some wins on the board. Can they make a run in this second half of the season with Cotton back?
They can. Look, everything is on the table for just about every team, right? But in Perth, not quite. But I'm trying to be optimistic here for a change. Perth, with Bryce Cotton coming back, he came back after the rib injury, 2 games, phenomenal in one, extremely ordinary in the second one. Candle Pinder, I still don't quite know what's going on. Is he going to start one week? Is he going to come off the bench another week? Is Dylan Windler going to be healthy? And when he is healthy, how's he going to play? It's a lot of moving parts going on with Perth. I don't have a whole lot of confidence. Yes, I look at their roster and I see what they're capable of. But you got to show it to me, though. Just don't tell me about it. So, yes, anything can happen, but I don't have a whole lot of faith.
My question is, who's going to play some defense on that perimeter? You know, I think you guys have spoken about that on this desk. I mean, Ben Henschel hasn't been doing that. Elijah Pepper hasn't been doing that. Is Bryce Cotton coming back going to help that? Does Ty Webster need to get some of that done? Is Dylan Windler the answer out there in some kind of way? But right now, guys are having some good times on the perimeter.
That's what you're playing very lowly.
against that team.
And the problem is, when teams get that reputation, guys are locking in when they come to play against them.
James Bateman had 51 before the FIBA break, and he's going to get a chance to do it again. They play each other again, Brisbane versus Perth. But you're right, it comes down to defence. The pieces there. I'm hoping
Are
to
the
see...
pieces there, though? Like, as Liam said, I'm not sure the cattle's there defensively.
Like, who's their Shea Yili, Wani Swakala Bullock, Bull Quall? Who's their guy that they put on these dudes?
You said Ty Webster. He's going to have to be...
Man, I love Ty Webster's game, but if you're relying on him to be your defensive guy, offensively, yeah, love him. He's a fantastic player. But if you're relying on him to be your defensive guy, you're in trouble.
Doolittle is your guy.
But he's not going to chase around Chris Golding.
Correct. But with him, because he was hurt, he didn't play last game. Well, a quarter.
He played a quarter. And then...
But if he's out there on the floor, it takes a hell of a lot of pressure off everybody else when they do get beat, Liam, like some of the guards get beat. At least if they run some ball screens, you can switch, or he can just clog up some stuff. Look, they're not a great defensive team with Christian Doolittle, but without him, good Lord.
It's why I just feel like the Elijah Pepper signing confuses me with that team. Take it right back to the offseason. You got Ben Henschel, you got Ty Webster, you've got Bryce Cotton. Who's the stopper? That's who I think you needed to bring in. And you've got Elijah Pepper there, who there's some double up with Ben Henschel with what he likes to do at both ends of the floor. And as a result, Golding, Bateman, these guys are having some fun.
It was quite an incredible signing when a lot of people were saying that they needed a defensive guy and they brought in a high-volume shooter in that position. So certainly an interesting one. But on the topic of contracts, I don't know whether they run out of pens in WA, whether there's an ink shortage, but Bryce Cotton remains unsigned and the conspiracy theories continue to whirl around. Will he return to the Wildcats? Am I peddling a false narrative, which is very likely sometimes a possibility, but right now I think I'm onto something.
Well, there's an article before the break, I believe, a News Corp, and he was saying that his decisions have not been made on money. His decisions are where he goes, because he said if everything was money orientated, if that was his main focus, he wouldn't have been in the NBL this long, which is right, because how much money could he have made overseas? He's been there, but it does open up. It could be a fascinating thing to watch, as you've been very hot on.
Someone could have told me to do that, make that sort of decision-making before I went on reality TV for the cash. So if Bryce Cotton could have just posted that article a little bit earlier, it would have been all fine and dandy over here. But let's jump to Tasmania quickly, because it still says on my rundown the possibility of getting Jack McVeigh back. At what point are we just going to say, hey, Jack McVeigh's having fun with his new partner? He's your ex. Let's get over it. They're doing great. He's an investment banker. His new partner's an investment banker, trust fund kid. There's cash flowing. I think they're happy in their relationship.
How do you get over that ex, though? What do they need to do?
You're asking the wrong dude. I've got one from about 5 years back that I'm still thinking about.
Well, that's the question, because they really miss him. They really miss him at the offensive end.
You're telling me about it.
I'm telling you, like they've been getting stops. You know, and it's a lot. We've spoken about this. You guys have done a great job of breaking this down.
Thank you.
It's a lot on Jordan Crawford and Milton Doyle on a week-to-week basis. who's that third guy?
Shawnee Mack.
Well, Shawnee Mack certainly helped in terms of making life a little easier for him. But who's that other guy that's going to put points on the board? Now, for me, I was really hoping it was going to be Majuk Deng. Was going to grow into being that guy. And he still is from time to time, but they need someone in that front court to be that dude on a week-to-week basis.
This is in no way an insult to Craig Sword, but do you think that the Jack Jumpers will regret not letting Sword go and bringing in a more offensive talent rather than a defensive-based guy in this second half of the year?
See, I don't believe that Scott Roth is that kind of guy. Like, he gets a guy, he's staying with the guy. New Zealand. He's going to stay with his guy. Okay, Craig Sword, you might not be a 20 guy, but you can still do some things to be helpful. Now, just to go back to your relationship thing,
I
like
it down for me.
Let's go. Now,
let's hear it.
When a relationship, when one partner leaves, sometimes the remaining partner who's left have to go and improve themselves.
No.
Sometimes they might go to the gym.
No,
sometimes they might go and get kind of re-educated, take a course, do something to improve themselves. So I'm looking at Anthony Drimmick. I'm looking at guys like the Anthony Drimmick. I'm looking at, obviously, Majuk Deng. I'm looking at Will Magnay. Can you do more? Will, you're already having a great season.
Great season.
But a great season. But more. More is now asked because our previous guy is no longer here.
Everything you just said does not apply to.
No.
I like it. I like it.
There was nothing.
No improvement whatsoever from 5 years ago.
I'm actually worse than what I was 5 years ago. But anyway, I've still got time to improve during the ad break. We'll see you in a moment.
Single digits now for Sobey and the Phoenix. Can they get something happening to go into halftime? Glover rattles it in. 4 on the shot clock here for the Sixers. DJ from downtown turning away with a hand in the face. That is outrageous. Rob Lowe trying to get Golding involved. He turns the corner and he owns the moment with his 9th three of the night.
Well, luckily for those trailing Chris Golding at 47, the ones that he hit against Thailand aren't going to count in the Mitsubishi Motors leading threes, because I'll tell you what, 19 threes over those 2 games, absolutely unbelievable work, and he is in red-hot form coming back into the league post-FIBA break. But it gives me no greater pleasure than to welcome in the foremost authority on the NBA draft, and apparently also these days, now that he's over here in Australia, the AFL draft, as well as a big Essendon fan. Sam Vecenie, welcome in, and you appear to be coming from us from some type of closet with some Blu-ray DVDs behind you.
That's correct. Yeah, just my little office here. I've created like a makeshift half office. It's great, just at home here in lovely Melbourne, Australia.
It's absolutely fantastic. We love having you here as well. Now, we're going to touch on a few players throughout the draft. Rocco Zikarsky coming off his best game against the Wildcats, and him paired with Emmett Nah, who's just joined, looks to be a really exciting combo.
Yeah, no, Rocco's a really interesting player. You can't teach size, first and foremost, and him being 7'3" with long arms. It's very clear that he has what the NBA is looking for. Having talked to Rocco, he understands his role is going to be, hey, I need to screen, I need to protect the rim, I need to finish at the basket. Maybe I'll get a pick and pop 3 occasionally. The key for Rocco is going to be continuing to develop. The thing that I say to people all the time is that Rocco is not only going to be 18 on draft night in 2025, he'll be 19 on draft night in 2026. So he's still incredibly young in the game at this point, and it's just going to take a minute for him to develop, and I think we've seen that this year defensively, but I don't see any reason to be lower on Rocco's long-term stock at this point. He's just a guy that's going to take a little bit of time.
Sam, I'm a huge Rocco supporter, and I want to see him not just get drafted, but I want to actually see him stay in the league. Now, we talk about development. Of course, we got to be very careful. I mean, he's a youngster, obviously, but can you be a little bit more specific for us? In what areas of development would you like to see from the big fella?
Yeah, the big thing for me is just positioning and defensive. I don't want to say engagement or awareness. It's just reps more than anything. Like, you see him close out onto shooters, something he's going to have to do all the time in the NBA. He takes like kind of short, choppy steps out and kind of gets in between steps. You see him in ball screen defense. I think that his angles sometimes end up being a little bit off in drop coverage. So just little things like that, little technique-based things more than anything. That's where I see Rocco's biggest growth as going to have to come. And, you brought up development. You want to see him stick in the NBA. The big thing that, I always say is that development is not linear. in these situations, right? Just because he has the ability to go, quote unquote, one and done into the NBA this season doesn't mean that he necessarily should in terms of his long-term growth. Maybe he should stick around another year in the NBL. Maybe he should, do something else. I don't know. Or maybe he proves throughout the course of this year, from December to January to February, that he's ready for the NBA. But I think that more than anything, he needs to continue to grow and develop, because it's going to take a minute for him if he was to leave to go to the NBA this season. And he puts a little bit of risk in his hands by doing so and potentially getting drafted, maybe not to the right organization that might not be as patient with him as is necessary. So we've got a long few months here with Rocco, I think, to try and figure out where he's going to land.
I think it's going to be an exciting few months as well, because what we saw with Emmett now finally get a point guard who is happy to just throw it up there and let him catch it from the clouds is fantastic. Now, Alex Tui, one of the most exciting ones, because for me, he's very exciting to watch. He started every game for the Kings. He sort of rode the highs and lows with them as a team so far.
Yeah, just very strange rotation for the Kings, game in, game out, right? It feels like, I don't know if Alex is going to play 12 minutes a game or if he's going to play 28 minutes in a game, right? The thing with Alex is I really buy the jumper, and I love the way they utilize him defensively. I love the way that they allow him to guard the opposing team's best perimeter player a lot of the time. That's something he's going to have to do regularly in the NBA. So if he can knock down shots and guard, that's a pretty exciting package for an NBA prospect.
Yes, and you talk about the rotations, and it's an interesting one. We're having a look at this, the players with 1 3-point, all the little things he does, right? He's a Swiss Army knife on the floor. Based on this deep roster that everyone keeps talking about with Sydney, and the opportunity fluctuates for a lot of players, what has impressed you the most? This is just a second-year pro who is going to be an NBA player someday, having to deal with that as a Swiss Army knife, where you do all these little things. You're not out there just to score 20 plus. You're not out there to get 12 rebounds. You've got to do everything in the opportunity you get.
Yeah, I think that what's impressed me most generally has been the defense. He is somebody that will guard the opposing team's best player, but also if you watch him on the back line, right, no matter who's out there on the court, he's always communicating. He's always talking to his teammates. He's always trying to make sure everybody's in the right space at the right time. And for a guy who's 20 years old, a kid really at this point, one of the youngest players in the NBL, for him to be constantly doing that, I think that is what is really, really impressive about Alex in terms of how he's grown from year 1 to year 2 in the NBL.
Sam, I feel like there was a period probably 2 to 3 weeks ago where Malik Lewis realised, I'm a much more dominant athlete than a lot of people in this league, and he's baptised a few people. What's his trajectory? Because we always say these next stars players, they sort of hit a wall and they just decide, you know what, I'm really good for the rest of the season, like LaMelo did, Josh Giddey did. Are we going to see a little bit of that, do you think, from Malik Lewis?
Well, I hope we do, because it felt like early in the season, it took him a second to adjust maybe to what his role was with that Southeast Melbourne organization. Obviously, they have the coaching change. They start incredibly poorly. Now that they have a new coach in place there, I do hope that his role becomes just totally settled, and it allows him to kind of settle into being that 3-and-D type of player who goes out in transition and, like you said, Felix, can throw down on guys. He's a great, great athlete. He is one of the best athletes in this league. But what appeals to NBA teams more than anything is that defensive switchability and versatility, his ability to guard up and down the lineup. That will be what allows him to stick in the NBA. But the key for all of this in terms of hanging a role together is going to be the jumper. He's really going to have to continue to prove that he can knock down shots from distance off the catch. It doesn't have to be off movement. It doesn't have to be off of anything crazy in terms of actions. Just standstill threes from the corner would be great. If he shows NBA teams he can do that, he will continue to rise.
Well, I wouldn't be at all surprised if he does rise, Malik Lewis. I feel like, Sam, you're doing a spectacular job on The Athletic, on the regular in this space, but I do feel like a lot of the kind of draft world, maybe not the NBA talent evaluators, who knows, we'll see on draft night. But I think that a lot of people are a little snoozing on Malik Lewis as a prospect, because you talk about that defensive versatility and that switchability. Like, we talk about Southeast Melbourne having risen. They've been number 2 in defense since Josh King has come into the head coaching role. That's also since Malik Lewis has come into the starting lineup, and he's guarding the best guy game after game after game, and the Phoenix are having a lot of success. So what do you feel like is the space that he can potentially get to over the course of the back end of this season, Sam, as he continues to show that to NBA front offices?
Well, to address your first point here, the way that you have to think about it is just when NBA people come out here, you know this as well as anybody, Liam, more NBA people come out here early in the season as opposed to right now, right? When he's really started to get rolling. And the only reason for that is because of logistics, right? Their season has started at this point. They can send scouts out to the NBL Blitz. They can send scouts out early in the season to an event like we had out in Perth, right? So it makes sense that scouts would be a little bit slower to this one on Malik Lewis, just because he is kind of rising right now in this moment where a lot of NBA folks just haven't gotten a chance to really see him and evaluate him yet at this point, since he's developed into this new role and has really developed into the role that they envisioned for him all along when they originally recruited him this past summer. To your second question, though, Liam, I would say, look, this draft class, there's a lot of hype at the top. There's so much excitement about guys like Cooper Flagg, Ace Bailey, Yegor Demon. You can look at the top and get really, really pumped. Really, after like 15 or so in this class, there's so much room. There is so much potential for guys to rise up into that space. I don't know if Malik will necessarily get to that level. He would really have to show increased ball skill, I think, to get to that like top 20 level. But anything 25 to 45 seems plausible at this point for any number of prospects, really, but certainly for somebody who NBA teams look at and think can defend in the way that Malik can.
Now, Sam, we could talk about Lopez for about an hour because he's that exciting of a prospect, but we don't have that much time. So we're going to go to who's going to be in the draft next year. Now, Manza at the Wildcats. John, really, he gave him a bit of time and he produced 17 points in the first half against Melbourne. He's another guy across the board. These next stars, this batch of next stars is really starting to show a lot more in the back end of the season. What are your excitement levels on him?
Yeah, really interesting player, right? Somebody that doesn't quite have like an NBA game that fits stylistically in that league, and yet NBA teams are still really interested, if only because he is somebody that can short roll. He can set a screen, get into that foul line extended area, and then make decisions. He can drive and finish. He can make passing reads. He's really, really sharp. His basketball IQ is exceedingly high level. Now, he needs to prove that he can defend. That is a place where NBA teams last year, when he was with the G League Ignite, kind of struggled with his evaluation. What I will say this year is I've been much more impressed with his ability to switch out onto guards. I think he seems to be in much better shape. He looks to have lost a little bit of weight. He's skinnier this year. He's added that quickness, in my opinion. So I would really hope that he can maybe slide down to the 4 to do that. He would really have to shoot it. We haven't seen a ton of that yet from distance. He's going to be an interesting one because I think he has potential to be exceptionally productive for them late in the season. It's just, how does he kind of show NBA evaluators that he's going to be able to fit within the role that they're going to ask him to play, beyond just being a really smart player out there?
Sam, thank you very much for joining us. And you have promised me a beer after a game at John Cain about 10 times so far, and we're yet to have it. So I'm expecting it. The next one.
I'm into it, man. Let's do it.
Perfect. Love it. Thank you for joining us, Sam. You can catch him on The Athletic. You can catch him absolutely everywhere. He's all over the place. The aforementioned, I don't even think that's the right word, but he's the number one go-to for the draft stocks right now. We're cutting to a break, and I'll study the dictionary. Welcome back to NBL Overtime. They told us that it was way too early preseason and awards watch, so now we're going to jump into the mid-season point and see where we sit. There's a real big surprise. I'm going to kick things off, and there's one that I'm talking in future. All NBL first team, PJC, Montrezl, Bryce Cotton, Matt Hurt, Kendrick Davis, all toward MVP, Parker Jackson Cartwright, and the depoy. That man right there, Taco Tuesday. If it works, he's 7'6". If he doesn't get 20 blocks a game if they play him, I'm going to be incredibly disappointed. Come on, man. Find a zone. Maybe I'm trying to manifest it.
In the words of Leonard Copeland, get off the crack.
He hasn't played a game.
Great use of quotes there, by the way.
Anyway, don't you bring that into it. Anyway, Pete, you're up.
Yeah, look, that's outrageous from you. I've got very similar. I've got a standout that you'll like.
You got Taco as well?
defensive player of the year, I've gone Shaylee. I think he's been terrific. And I think Bryce Conn just missing games towards the end. If it's to stop now, not to say he will be an all-NBL
Hater.
We know about that. But everyone's going to have PJC Trez. Sixth man, I've got Will Hickey. I think Will Hickey has been phenomenal for the Illawarra Hawks. And again, I think a lot of it, I'm doing an awards watch piece that will come out this week. Even with most improved is in the conversation too. It's not so much going to be statistics-based because we haven't had a huge jump in most improved statistics-wise, other than like Taron Armstrong who needs to play some more games. But contribution to winning and importance to a successful team, Dave Hickey is leading that charge for me. And with Melbourne continuously changing their lineup, I think he's a sixth man of the year.
Well,
In your own time, Liam.
mine's very similar. Mine is very similar in terms of what I've got for the All-NBL first team. I think both you guys had Matt Hurt in there. He's certainly been very, very good. I've got Xavier Cooks in there instead, who, geez, if it wasn't for him, the Kings might be in a slightly worse spot. Defensive player of the year, I got Will Magnay. I love Shayeli, what he's been doing. Wani Swakala-Bullock needs a little shout out here. He's been terrific for the Hawks. But one thing that Jack Jumpers have been doing this season is defending at a good level, and Will Magnay has been the key to all of that. And for sixth man, I don't know how it's not James Bateman at this point. Okay, a little recency bias with the 51-point game.
Which was scored when he was starting.
But the reality is that guy has come off the bench for the majority of his games thus far, which is the criteria for this award, and he's averaging 16 points a game.
Will he continue to come off the bench?
I'm understanding that we're giving these out for like right now.
Oh, we are? Well, okay. Well, mate, I don't think Taco's quite earned the Defensive Player of the Year right now. But
Well, for mine, Liam, point guards, we think alike. Our starting five, our first team, all NBL's first five is the same.
Lock and load.
Now, I'm all about winning. So yes, I could have had Matt Hurt in there. He's a professional bucket getter, but you're not playing playoff basketball right now. So all those guys in my first NBL All First team, them guys are featured in the finals. MVP is the little big man, Parker Jackson Cartwright. That's a no-brainer so far at this stage. Sixth man, I'm also going with Dave Hickey for everything you just said, Pete. Everything you just said. And defensive player, I could have raffled it, but I like Shea. I did a game and Shea just, without even getting a defensive stat, he just single-handedly just tore apart Perth's defense. I mean, their offense. You just can't run plays with Shea on the floor. So, Shea for mine, but definitely a shout-out to Will Magnay as well as Wani Swakala-Bullock.
And Ball Qual. There's no one. Sorry, you go. We're doing defensive, guys.
Let's have an all NBL team. Why do we always have to have one player? Yeah, we need a defensive team.
I'm with you.
Okay, well, let's get it. Let's jump into Trend Is Your Friend. Let's see what the bookies have got on offer for us to capitalise. A juicy steak to bite into this week. And we've actually got, surprisingly, for it being a week off basketball, I think we've found and we've run into one of the best trends of the season so far, and that is how teams do on the back end of the FIBA break. Now, we've dived into the stats, and when I say we've dived into the stats, I was hard on the producer to find this sort of stuff, and I said, get in there and get it. And this is what he's come back with. He's done a fantastic job, Nathan. Look at those two teams that do the best after the FIBA break.
Why do you think that is?
Is there something that you notice? Because they've got horrid travel schedules. They're flying in economy from New Zealand and Perth, and then you know what? They get their FIBA break. They just relax. They're not getting on a flight. New Zealand's a beautiful place in the world to be. So look at them in their last couple of games. They've looked tired, both of the teams. The Wildcats, they've looked terrible, fatigued, sick of travelling with their knees up next to their ears in economy. And now, the FIBA break. They have a nice little chance to rest. And I'll tell you what, guys, I reckon, and the stats back me up, you look at this, the Breakers, of course, lost to Tasmania, just beat a Cairns with barely anyone playing. Fatigue has set in. They knew the FIBA break was coming. They were going to be away from the check-in lounge.
Oh, didn't they win this game?
They won this one, but it was barely anyone playing for Cairns. Hey, you get out of here, Liam. Where's Derek? Can we get Derek back in there? But the bet suggestion for this one is, and the stats back it up, that I think we're going with the Wildcats and we're going with the Breakers in this one, who are both playing as outsiders right now. Are you with me, guys?
No, not at all.
The break is going to be a really tough game. Taco Fall going in there against Illawarra, I think that's going to be a really exciting game as well. I understand that. I think what you said is spot on. But speaking of which, you just pricked my ears. How's Taco going to go travelling across the country? You talk about...
If they don't put Taco in business class, it's cruel and unusual punishment, and I will be coming for the New Zealand Breakers.
He'll sit next to you going to the games then. Could you get one, eh?
Yeah, I get that, because Platinum won. Anyway, time to get to a break. Plenty more coming up next.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
Welcome back to NBL Overtime. Finally, the fever break is done. We need to be gone with it, delete it, snap it, do whatever you want. We never want to see it again. Unfortunately, we will. But round 10, it's coming up. Let's have a look at the schedule and see where we're at. Finally, basketball hits our televisions again. Pete Hooley, what are you most looking forward to?
Well, you taking a breath firstly after. To be perfectly honest. Thursday, big game, Illawarra, New Zealand. Looking forward to calling that game. Illawarra going into the break with a win. See how they continue things.
Nothing better than a bit of self-promotion, hey?
Is that to me, Felix, is it?
No, it's to Pete. I'm going to be calling that one.
All right. I'm looking forward to Perth, New Zealand. I could have swore Perth was playing Brisbane first out of the break, though. What am I looking at?
Friday night.
That's on Friday
now.
Oh,
I'm similarly looking forward to that game. The trend is whose friend? Perth or New Zealand? I'm looking forward to finding
It
out.
depends. I'll get back to you after the original Friday night games. But it's time to jump into Under Pressure, everybody's favourite segment and everybody's most hated stinger. Look at that little, what am I cooking on school camp right there? God knows right now.
Like dumpling.
Damon, you're going to kick us off with the fifth most under pressure.
Under pressure for me is the front court of the Adelaide 36ers. Jarrell Martin, you're going to need to play like the son of Jarrell. That's Superman for you guys that don't know. And Isaac Humphries, because with Montrezl Harrell being out for the next 3 games, Trez taking with him 20 points and 9 rebounds, and you guys are combining for maybe 17 and 10, going to need to bump it up. There's no excuses.
Well, for me, number 4, it's going to be the Cairns Taipans. I think that the NBL should have made Kendric Davis and Montrezl serve their suspension playing for the Cairns Taipans to get them back into this thing a little bit because they need some bodies on the floor.
Not bad from you.
And number 3 for me, Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. Spoke about it before. You got some home games here. Coming out of the break, you need to get a bunch of these wins to put yourself back in that playoff picture.
Number 2, I've got the Sydney Kings. We haven't spoke about them. McGorge, the press conference before the break, he said they're playing for their season. It's now or never. I reckon they start to really kick into gear, and by January, they'll be playing the best basketball.
Well, and the most under pressure, for me, it's the NBL. Ooh. For someone who toes the company line continuously, a mouthpiece for the NBL. I'm stepping out of line here and saying it. The tribunal process, we just need, let the media in, have it in a glass house. I don't know what you need to do, but let's just let everyone in on the action. When I say that, I mean credited journalists. Damon, Liam, Pete, fantastic job. Finally, the fever break is over. May we never speak of it again. And we got some NBL action coming up, round 10.